Hey guys, it's Kyle down here at LunaCycle. Today I'm going to show you the unboxing and assembly of the new Talaria Sting R MX4. First thing you're going to want to do is cut all the straps on the top and pull the lid off. Alright, now you're going to want to remove most of the packaging and locate the parts box. The only packaging you do want to leave installed is these two blue straps on the rear. Alright guys, so once you've got all the packaging off and found your parts box, you'll find inside the parts box you have both your pegs, you have your front wheel bushings, you have the little battery rubbers which keep the battery from moving around, you have your stem faceplate, you got your keys here. It does come with a handy little toolkit to assemble this guy. It's also very nice that they include enough for one oil change in the gearbox. You got your fender, and then the fender mounting bolts, and also some little rubbers to clean up the wiring. And most importantly, you got your keys. Alright, so once you're at this point, the first thing you're going to want to do is install the handlebars. So find the faceplate and 4 black bolts. You'll also want your 5mm Allen key, and we're going to go ahead and install the handlebars right in the middle of the stem here. Now you want to center this as best you can, and go ahead and just get all 4 of these bolts evenly tightened, but you don't need to really crank them down yet. You're going to want to make final adjustments once the front wheel is on. And so just get all 4 of these bolts just somewhat tight so the handlebars are in place. And again, we will make some final adjustments once the front wheel is on, so don't stress too much about getting the angle quite right yet. Alright, your next step, and probably the hardest step, is going to be to remove this front axle. Sometimes these do get stuck in this block of wood, so you just need to be patient. You don't want to force it, you don't want to break your axle. Just take your time, I'm going to show you how to get this out. There is one more blue strap you need to remove on the front. Don't try to remove the axle until you've gotten rid of this strap. Alright, I do want to show you a few different tips for removing this axle. It can be quite difficult, and it is likely the most difficult part of this build. I do want to confirm that all 4 of these pinch bolts are loose. They are loose from the factory, but it doesn't hurt to double check. Now there are a few different versions of this axle out there, and a few different versions of this fork. Sometimes these 4 pinch bolts are on the bottom, but on all the current model bikes it's going to be this style axle. You can back out this bolt a little bit and give it a tap with a mallet. That can help you start the axle removal. And then I am going to show you a few safe ways to tap this axle all the way out. You don't want to damage this, otherwise you will not be riding that day. You'll need to order a new axle, and it can take a while. So on all these forks, you can loosen up one side, leave it in a few threads, and give it a tap with a mallet. You don't want to use an actual hammer, otherwise you can damage this. If you don't have a mallet, you can use a block of wood. So give this one a strike, and you'll see you've already got the axle to move a little bit. Now, on the opposite side of all of these, there is a spot for a wrench. On the factory fork, it is a gigantic 12mm hex, which most people will not have a 12mm hex. On some other style forks, it's an 8 on both ends. So you can insert a tool into the other side, rotate it left and right, and that can help you pull this out. There is another safe way to tap this out. If you use a 3/8 socket extension, you can insert it in here, give this a few taps, and that'll push the axle out without damaging it. You can also use like a 12mm socket. These are nice and rounded, and they won't damage the axle. So today I'm going to show you how to tap this out using the extension, which most guys will have in their garage. There you go. So as you can see, it's in there tight. It's never an easy process, but if you're patient, you can get this out without damaging it. I'm going to show you a little tip that I do when I have to build these by myself. I go ahead and pull the battery out. It's going to make the bike a whole lot lighter, and it'll make it a lot easier to get this axle out. So with your keys, you can go ahead and unlock the battery compartment. Just a little counterclockwise turn right here. Your battery will be unplugged when it's shipped to you. And just go ahead and lift straight up on this strap, pull your battery out, and set it aside. Alright guys, so if you're assembling this bike yourself and you don't have a helper to lift the bike up, there is one good little piece of packaging that comes inside the box, and this can help you prop the whole front of the bike up so you can get the front wheel on. So if you carefully lift up on the fork and stick this piece of packaging right under the bash guard, be sure the wheel is still inside of that little wheel well right there. And it provides a nice little support so you can put this front wheel on just all by yourself. There is a tiny little disc brake guard. You can go ahead and remove that, save it if you want. Now it's time to prep the front wheel. You do have two wheel bushings or spacers. They do have tiny little O-rings on them, so you do want to install these carefully. They are identical, so you can mix them up. The left and the right are the exact same. And just be patient. Sometimes guys are a little impatient and they'll break the little O-ring that's on these. Alright, so we've got our axle caps securely in place. Now it's time to lift this up into place and then insert the axle. You do want to use the disc brake as your guide. So eyes are only on the disc brake. You're going to want to lift it right in between the two pads and into place. Now this axle only goes in from the non-brake side. There are some other forks out there where the axle doesn't matter which direction it goes, but this one only goes in one direction. Go ahead and tap that into place. And it's time to go ahead and tighten down the axle cap. The torque specs on this main bolt are 10 to 15 Newton meters, which is pretty tight. And now the most important part is tightening all four of these pinch bolts. These pinch bolts need to be very tight, and there's a special way to tighten these. So go ahead and start by using the ball head of this tool and get them as tight as you can. But then you'll notice when you tighten the right one, all of a sudden the left one's loose. And then when you tighten the left one, all of a sudden the right one's loose. So you want to go back and forth, back and forth. And the torque spec on these is 10 Newton meters. So just take your time, go back and forth. And you're going to want to do this on both sides. So now that you've got the front wheel properly secured, it's time to remove this whole base plate. So you can go ahead and put the bike on the kickstand and remove the two rear straps. Alright, now it's time to install your pegs. The pegs are left and right specific. So if you mock this up, imagine if you hit something, you want this to fold back. So this is your right peg, and then this will be your left peg. They fit right in this middle hole right here. And they use a 15 mil nut on the back. It does include a nice little tool. If you have a socket, that'll speed things up. Now the right side peg is very easy. The left side peg, there is a kickstand wire, and we'll show a close-up of that. You do want to be careful not to pinch that kickstand wire with the nut. Alright, and then tighten down your 2 peg bolts once you're sure you're not going to pinch that wire. Alright, now it's time to install your front fender. You're going to use these 4 washers and 4 bolts. Did you provide the proper tool to install this? There's no real torque spec on these, but you do want them fairly tight. Alright, so once you've got your fender installed, now it's time to sit over the bike and arrange the handlebars and torque them down. Alright, you're going to want to take your 5mm Allen key and loosen all 4 faceplate bolts and go ahead and arrange your handlebars exactly where you want them. Some guys like them rolled back, some guys like them pushed very far forward. Alright, so once you've got all 4 of these bolts loose, you can roll your handlebars forward and back and also center them. Now the torque spec on these 4 bolts is actually very high. It's 10 Newton meters, which is quite a lot for a stem, so don't be shy. You are going to want to crank these down quite a bit, and you're going to want to tighten them evenly. So you don't want to tighten both the top 2 and have this touch. You do want an even gap on the bottom and the top. And while you're at it, you may as well check these 2 pinch bolts right here on the stem. These are 15 Newton meters, which is very high. These are usually very tight from the factory, but I do suggest you check them. There's also the crown bolts right here. Be sure these are nice and tight. They usually are from the factory, but I do recommend you check them. And do that on both sides. Alright, next you're going to notice that you have all these connectors up here. Sometimes all of them will be unplugged, sometimes only the 2 on the right side. Now these are all very delicate little connectors, and you do need to be careful. I know you're eager to go ride, but don't just shove these in or it could mess things up. So there are a little arrow on each end of the connector. You see that arrow right there? And you do want to be sure those line up before you plug these in. So that's your brake connector. This one's even more tricky. This is your throttle. Don't want to damage this. And plug both of those in all the way. Alright, so once you've got the handlebars tight and all your connectors plugged in, it is time to reinstall the battery and install the 2 little battery rubbers, which keep it from bumping around. So it is easiest to open this lid with the handlebars straight. If you have them turned, it can interfere with this lid. So straighten your handlebars. You're going to want to move this connector out of the way and then drop the battery straight in. You can see the discharge wires are on the right side. And drop the battery straight down. Alright, so once your battery's in place, it's time to plug in your main discharge wire. Be sure your breaker is flipped to the left when you plug this in or unplug it. You're going to want to carefully align the little plug and then push straight down until you hear it click. Now it's time to install the little battery rubber. This keeps your battery from moving around and making noise. I've noticed it's easiest to install this if you line it up on your strap right at the edge of your battery and then peel off half of the double-sided tape. So leave this sitting right here and then go ahead and close your battery lid all the way. Now when you reopen it, you'll see it's right where it should be, up on the lid. So this is going to keep the battery from moving up and down when you're riding. Now there is a second battery rubber which goes right here, and this one sticks to the battery itself. So go ahead and carefully remove half of the double-sided tape. Now this one is easiest to install if you lift the battery up just a tiny bit, stick it to the battery, and then drop it back down. You do want it a little bit further down so it keeps the battery from moving forward and back. And you do want this lid to be a little bit difficult to close. It's going to keep your battery from moving in any direction. So that's proper install of the battery and the little battery rubbers. Alright, now you've successfully assembled your Talaria Sting MX4R. It's time to power it up. Before you can turn the key and power it up, you do need to turn this breaker all the way to the right. Go ahead and close your battery lid, and then once you turn your key, you'll see your display turn on. It's going to say wait. You do need to put the kickstand up and then press this little start button on the throttle before it'll let you ride. Now it says ready and you're in sport mode. You do have the two modes. You have eco mode, which is nice and mellow. I suggest you start off in that. And then if you press this middle button again, then you're in the fast mode, sport mode. Alright, now I know you're eager to ride, but there is one thing that is very important. You do need to open up the little vent tube on the Talaria gearbox. There is a little clip right here. It's closed from the factory. It's meant to be open and closed. Before you ride, you do want to open this, and then before you transport this on its side, you do want to close it back up. So I know it can be easy to forget, but you do want this guy wide open when you're riding your bike. Another final step would be to check your tire pressure and also give your spokes a little squeeze to make sure your spokes are nice and tight. We do recommend you check the axles before every ride and also squeeze the brakes a few times, make sure they're working properly. Alright guys, now that you've successfully assembled your Talaria Sting, it's time to get out there and ride.